When Jason Bingham thinks of home, this is what he sees in his mind's eye. This as much a part of him as breathing, as his own heart.
God's country here, we just love it. You can't see any neighbors for as far as you can see, and it's just a beautiful place.
A good horse, a faithful dog, and a sturdy truck were about all he needed out here. Until he met her. And what happened when Jason met Stacy was, well, love, brand new, can feel unique. But for them, way out here in God's country, it truly was. Haines is a dot, a speck in a grand sweeping landscape, a town of 400 or so, near the Oregon-Idaho border. Here, Jason Bingham worked in his father's accounting business. Stacy was an obstetrics nurse at a nearby hospital. And this was the home the Binghams loved, and where they imagined they'd raise their kids and live for the rest of their lives.
Hi, Easter morning. We're really late for church.
Say it takes each one of them to make us a family. You have Sierra, who is compassionate and loving, and you have Megan, who's confident and athletic, and Lindsay's been our little bossy jabberjaws. She makes sure everyone stays in line. And then Hunter, who is just a happy-go-lucky 5-year-old.
Full of energy.
Just full of energy and life. And then Gage, who's kind of the family clown.
We love it. Come home from work and it's just a party.
But parties, of course, don't last forever. Because the Bingham family was about to become a terrifying medical mystery. One of the strangest, most off-the-charts, unlikely stories we'd ever heard of. It began here in May 2006, when Sierra, their eldest, threw up for several days. Her parents took her to the doctor.
The doctor comes in and says you can have one of three things here. It could be a pneumonia, a form of cancer, or something called cardiomyopathy.
They gave her an echocardiogram. The diagnosis was obvious. Dilated cardiomyopathy. Heart failure. What happens in here when a thing like that?
Oh. Well, first you're in a misty fog, kind of like your world just came crushing in around you. And then just trying to put your mind around it, grasp it, just fear.
The doctors put Sierra on some heavy medication and sent her home.
I remember asking her to come help plant some flowers that would be coming back every year, so that if something did happen, I'd have some kind of memory of her, but she was too tired or too weak to do it.
Sierra was failing fast. Nothing more the regional hospitals near home could do. So she was flown to Lucille Packard Children's Hospital in the heart of the Silicon Valley, a world away from Oregon's eastern prairies. But even here, there were no easy answers, and the doctors gave Jason and Stacy the news. Without an almost immediate heart transplant, their daughter would die.
It was horrible. When we say it was a nightmare, it was the worst time of our life. I bar none, it was the worst 3 weeks of my life.
The wait for a donor heart for a child can be months. It was time Sierra didn't have.
To say there's a time when you've shed every tear you can shed and go home that night completely exhausted, physically, emotionally. We'd hit that point.
We called as many people as we could and asked, please pray for our little child tonight. And at 1:30 in the morning, we got a phone call. And I thought, that's it.
We thought it was for the worst. And the doctors called and they said, we have a heart available for Sierra. And I was like, are you serious?
The Bingham's prayers were answered. The next afternoon, Sierra received her new heart. It had belonged to a 4-year-old boy. In the world of heart transplants, size matters more than age. Sierra's new heart would grow as she did.
I think when it came, we knew everything was going to be fine. There was just never, ever any doubt.
But the Binghams wondered why. Why did Sierra's own heart fail? Did they need to worry about their other kids? The doctors assured them the likelihood was extremely remote. But just to be sure, they tested them both, and echocardiograms detected no hint of the disease. And there was no history of heart disease at all on either Jason or Stacy's side of the family.
So we thought, good, to rule that out, that's not an issue then.
And then came Lindsay's tummy ache. It was 2012, 6 years after Sierra's transplant. Lindsay, the third eldest, vomited at school.
We thought, well, it could not be the same. I think both of us were probably in denial.
They took Lindsay to the ER in nearby Baker City, where the doctor examined her, and then asked Jason and Stacy about Sierra.
We said, well, she had dilated cardiomyopathy, and he says, yeah, she's got the same thing. And
she's got an enlarged heart.
Yeah, I think I lost it. I couldn't keep my composure, and I remember just sobbing.
Lindsay grew so sick so quickly that the very next day she was flown to Lucille Packard Children's Hospital, the very same place they brought Sierra for her heart transplant 6 years earlier. Now, it was impossible not to think there was some genetic link involving their daughter's heart disease. So Jason brought the rest of the children here too, for tests.
It was on June 8th. It was a Friday. It was a RD day, I think. We were sat down and told that of our 5 children, that all of them either had cardiomyopathy or had flaggers or symptoms that they watch that can turn into a cardiomyopathy.
Their doctors were as astonished as they were. Even though the electrocardiograms years earlier had looked normal, now all the Bingham children, every single one, would be confronted with the distinct possibility of one day requiring a heart transplant just to stay alive. That's when we first met the Binghams. And, at least in part to make people aware of the desperate need for donors, they agreed to trust us, to allow our cameras to follow them through moments of despair and courage and bottomless love.
Okay, right here.
A journey unlike anything you've ever seen before. When trouble came to visit the Bingham family of Haines, Oregon, it came in bulk, family size. All 5 of their children had cardiomyopathy, or markers for the disease, meaning it was in their DNA, could happen any time. At 12, Sierra had been living with a transplanted heart for half her life, and now Lindsay's heart was failing. On June 20th, 2012, she was put on the transplant list. To lighten her mood, Jason promised to let his beard grow until she got a new heart. But Lindsay was near death. Her only option, immediate surgery to implant a high-tech pump until a heart became available.
She's like, so it's just like a heart transplant, only I won't be getting a heart.
The surgery was successful, buying Lindsay critical time. However, while she was recovering in ICU, her parents, who'd been through so much, experienced another setback. It was Gage this time.
Something weird about him. He wasn't acting right.
They took him to the emergency room.
They said, yeah, he's in complete heart block. We need to admit him.
And to have doctors checking him more than they were checking Lindsay that night.
Can't imagine what that would do to you.
Unbelievable.
And now Gage, just 3 years old, was rushed into surgery to have a pacemaker implanted. By the end of that awful day, the Binghams had 2 children in post-operative ICU. But children are nothing if not resilient, and within 2 weeks, Gage, with his new pacemaker, was up and about, and Lindsay, who had been near death, was proudly showing off her clever mechanical heart.
This is my Berlin pump, and it goes up into here, and it connects to my heart. And this pump is the air, and this machine helps me, and if it got turned off, it hooked me up to a little thingamajiggy.
So, what else are we gonna do now?
Wait until the heart comes right.
Yep.
And naturally, a beat kid,
Bye.
but understandably one who's still quite afraid.
Fancy little heart there. What's that like to wear?
When I stand up, you can kind of feel it pumping.
Yeah. So it's like you feel your heart beating, but it's beating on the outside of your body.
And it's kind of scary.
This has allowed her to feel healthy enough that she's a regular 8-year-old girl. She wants to skip and jump and play, and it's a false sense of security because you forget she is still on a heart device that is keeping her heart pumping.
The rest of the family moved into Ronald McDonald House across the street from the hospital. 2 bedrooms for all of them. And Lindsay's siblings enrolled in city schools, a world away from anything they had ever known before.
My class and grade was 28 kids. And so now my grade is 200 kids.
But Sierra had been where Lindsay was now, and in daily visits to the hospital, offered advice about the endless needles and biopsies and the daily terrors of her new life.
I was really scared, so I asked Sierra what it was really like to have a heart.
What'd she tell you?
She told me it was kind of scary at first, but then you're fine.
Her siblings worked to build her up. And as Jason and Stacy waited, mired here in their impossibly bad luck, a remarkable lightness seemed to carry them through their long, draining days, their sleepless nights. They did not complain. They remained upbeat for the kids and taught them the meaning of gratitude for what they have been given.
Do they understand where the hearts come from?
Yeah, they do.
Donor and patient information is kept strictly confidential, but messages between the families can be exchanged anonymously through the donor network. So, shortly after Sierra's transplant, the Binghams sent a thank you letter to the donor family. They received a letter back from the grandmother of the 4-year-old boy, whose heart now beat in Sierra's chest.
We're eternally grateful to his mother and his grandmother that wrote the letter, and the sacrifices she made to allow Sierra to live.
Just as you'll be eternally grateful to some other family.
Right now I pray for that family out there, someone out there in the western United States has a child that's going to save our life.
There was, of course, no way to know if or when there would be a heart for Lindsay. Jason and Stacy were keenly aware that some 50 children die each year waiting for a heart. And here, as they waited, 2 months passed, and then 3, and the seasons changed. Jason's beard grew longer, Back in Little Haines, Oregon, people understood that all this cost money, lots of money. The Binghams have insurance, but it doesn't cover the very expensive multiple medications the kids will need every day for the rest of their lives. Tens of thousands of dollars a year.
I'm a 3-bed, 3.5.
And so the people of Haines put on an auction. They raised nearly $75,000. Occasionally, Jason went home to lend a hand on the family cattle drive or pick up clothes for the kids, who were now outgrowing them.
It's a lonely place to be here. I don't know how we're going to continue to live here. We want to live here so bad.
But of course, they couldn't go home.
Today's Labor Day, so we thought we'd give Lindsay the chance to labor.
They celebrated Halloween in the hospital, followed by Thanksgiving, then Christmas. Jason and Stacy brought an artificial tree into Lindsay's room. She put on the finishing touch, her beads of courage, each bead representing a needle poke, a day in the hospital or procedure she's endured. The string wrapped around the tree 3 times. But Christmas came and went, and then Valentine's Day approached. They'd been waiting nearly 8 months now.
What are you looking forward to?
Get a new heart
Yeah. And then?
and go home.
At 6 p.m. on February 12th, a doctor pulled Stacy out of Lindsay's room for a chat, something to tell her. She refused to tell the kids what she was told.
Because I know the secret now.
Sarah thinks she knows. She doesn't know anything.
I know it.
Then Stacy called Jason and waited in Lindsay's room for him to arrive. He passed the nursing station, alive with
She
excitement.
doesn't know yet. Guess what?
I knew it.
Are you
Guess
ready?
what?
You gotta guess.
What?
Look at the window over there.
What?
Do I have her?
You have a heart!
It's gonna happen. It's finally gonna happen, princess. You did it. You did it. You waited.
So she did. Though what was coming next was, well, who could predict such a thing?
And I'm like, this has to be a dream. This has to be a dream. I'm like, wake up, Lindsay, wake up. But it's not.
8-year-old Lindsay Bingham has been waiting for a new heart for 239 days. And now, finally, they have found a match. The doctor scheduled surgery the next afternoon.
I'm just scared a little. Pretty scared. They're going to be cutting up my chest and then putting out a heart, and then putting another one in.
A swirl of conflicting emotions, even more so for Lindsay's parents. Stacy has news she'd been dreading to share with Jason. It's about their eldest daughter, Sierra, who had a routine checkup earlier in the day.
Sierra is downstairs. She's actually
How is she doing?
gonna be admitted to the CVICU.
CVICU stands for Cardiovascular Intensive Care Unit. The sudden change in Jason's demeanor tells you just how grave was the news.
I don't know what the deal is. What's going on?
They just said that her pressures are really high, and so they wanted to admit her to the CICU, they don't know if it's rejection or something else.
And we have a daughter that's going in for a transplant in a few hours, and we have a daughter that's being admitted into the ICU. I can't tell you how much I need that woman right there.
Jason and Stacy try to put a positive spin on the news when they tell Sierra.
So they want to put you in the unit till when they get your biopsy results back, so we'll know by this afternoon, and then decide, is it rejection or is it something else?
Great day.
Great day. Lindsay's going in for a transplant, and you're in the best place you can be right now.
And they caught it.
One day we're going to look back at this and just laugh our heads off.
But the Binghams know exactly how serious rejection could be. If treatment doesn't work, it could mean Sierra will go back on the transplant list.
I'm sick to my stomach, I'll be honest. I feel like someone hit me in the gut. Just because she gets a transplant doesn't mean it's over. It's just the beginning.
So, mind in turmoil, heart pulled in two directions on this one climactic day. Jason returns to Lindsay's room, where he and one of Lindsay's nurses try to keep her upbeat before surgery.
Ready, set, go. So put your one out here.
Lindsay learns she'll get her new heart in the first hours of Valentine's Day. And finally, 30 hours after they learned about the donor heart, it's time to go.
Crank it all the way up. You earned this one.
Lindsay chooses her own soundtrack for her walk to the operating room. Somebody to Love.
I got chills right now. Seeing her perk up did everything I needed. Let's put this thing around you, like you mean it.
With her baby blanket transformed into a superhero cape, she's ready to face the scariest event of her young life. Jason works to keep Lindsay's fear at bay.
This is where I get the biggest hug in the world, okay? I'll see you in just a few minutes, right?
Right?
Remember what happens in a few minutes? Right? You just go to sleep and then you wake right up.
It makes me like it better.
Yep. Love you, Lindsay Lou.
Lindsay's room now needs to be made available for the next child in line. So Jason and Stacy pack everything up while they wait for the donor heart to arrive.
They're going to be here in 15 minutes.
Hi. Are you the car?
Yes.
Lindsay's chest is open right now, so she's to go.
Jason and Stacy aren't prepared for the emotions they feel as they see the donor heart arrive.
The reality of it really sunk in when we saw that cooler just says human heart on it. You see that nurse head down the hallway to my little princess who's opened up and ready and waiting for it.
It's a strange emotion for observers, too, to watch life captured in this small container, passed from one child to another, even as a third heart struggles just down the hall.
I'll see you in just a few minutes, right?
Right?
Lindsay Lou Bingham is in an operating room at Lucille Packard Children's Hospital in Palo Alto, where surgeons are replacing her failing heart, while her parents receive updates through the night and into the morning.
Things are looking good.
This doctor, though, after reporting in about Lindsay, switches the conversation to Sierra.
So I'd like to kind of regroup with the whole team and talk over things and see if we can come up with a more effective long-term treatment strategy for her.
I guess I just need to hear you say that we have options.
There are options to look into, but
This conversation, mind you, is taking place while Lindsay is still in surgery. While doctors stitch together 5 separate connections, they begin with the new heart outside Lindsay's body. then finish up once it's slipped inside. The heart has not beaten since it was taken from the donor nearly 4 hours earlier. The next step is crucial. The team will use a defibrillator to spark Lindsay's new heart back to life.
Yes. 10.
Immediately it begins to pump and soon finds its rhythm.
So it took a couple hours longer than I expected, but everything went very, very smoothly.
But the Binghams now have 2 daughters in the cardiovascular ICU. Sierra's biopsy results show antibodies are attacking her heart and already have caused some damage. Doctors tell the Binghams they'll try a treatment called plasmapheresis, in which they attempt to remove the harmful antibodies from her blood. It sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. There's a chance that to survive, Sierra will one day need a second heart transplant.
The reality of it is, it's never going to be the same. There's always going to be something, and now that always something is going to be times 2. You know, it was really hard. You just felt like your emotions are on a roller coaster, and you want to be happy for the one, but you're feeling so bad and want to cry with the other one.
And of course, there's little Gage, who has the same heart disease and already a pacemaker at age 4. Jason and Stacy do their own form of triage, focusing on the sickest child. For now, that's Lindsay.
Lindsay. We're all here now. Megan's here. So is Gage.
The days after a heart transplant are, of course, critical. And Lindsay's first few bring complications. But soon she's up and walking without an artificial heart pump for the first time in 8 months. And Jason keeps a promise by letting Lindsay cut off the scraggly beard he started growing the day she was placed on the transplant list.
Just pull one down at a time. Do it.
Lindsay.
2 weeks after getting her new heart, Lindsay is ready to leave the hospital.
Are you ready to go?
Oh, yeah.
She's out of here.
She isn't going far, mind you. Just down the street to Ronald McDonald House, until both Lindsay and Sierra are cleared for the trip they so desperately want. The one back home. But first, another biopsy to see if Sierra's treatment stopped, or at least slowed, the rejection. Cardiologist Daniel Bernstein will make the call.
I think right now things are going well. Go home, enjoy being in your home, and let's see how things go over the next couple of years. If things quiet down, no problems, then you're fine where you are.
Okay.
Words the Binghams wondered if they would ever hear again. And in spite of all they've been through, they are grateful.
We've walked away twice now with 2 children still alive. And that's more than some parents can say that have to leave here. And we can go home with 5 children.
It was an almost surreal celebration that day in 2013, as if their troubles had been forced to retreat outside their own little bubble of happy. There was the long drive home to Haines, Oregon, the big surprise welcome from just about the whole town.
I know it's scary.
How are you? Good to see you. Sierra, overjoyed to see her own bed. And Lindsay, the trampoline. Just a regular kid again.
So are you letting yourself feel like that's it, we're home, or can you quite go there?
We got a new norm now. To think that it's over, no. It's just the beginning.
The family, though, was finally back on the ranch, and the Binghams settled gratefully into their new normal a life Jason and Stacy knew would be no more permanent than a sunset. The Binghams have settled into their new normal, a life packed with the controlled chaos of raising 5 children, 2 of whom have transplanted hearts and a third who has a pacemaker. 2 years have gone by, years during which they've managed to stay here in rural Oregon, far from the hospital, in the home they love so much. Lindsay is now off the anti-rejection steroids that caused her face to swell and has a fresh set of braces on her teeth. Sierra is in high school, learning to drive. They make the trek to Palo Alto every few months for checkups and biopsies, which Lindsay actually looks forward to.
I like seeing the doctors and stuff.
Stacy is the girl's most loyal cheerleader. But on this trip to the hospital, January 2015, she is uneasy.
I have a lot of anxiety over this one. Is it just going to be something simple, or is it going to be something we're not prepared for? But it's the reality of it.
Sierra has had some swelling and a cough that won't go away.
All those tubes filled up? That is a lot.
One after the other, the girls go in for their biopsies. The procedure that once frightened Lindsay has become old hat.
Hey, I like them not crying.
Lindsay's transplanted heart is working beautifully. No sign of rejection. But what about Sierra's?
After this baby girl, there's going to be a little bit pushing, okay?
She's been fighting rejection for several years now.
The real question, to be perfectly honest, I mean to sort of jump on you, is whether or not it's time to start thinking about transplant number 2.
Stacy's gut feeling was right. Sierra's condition has worsened. Dr. Seth Hollander explains they've run out of options to fight the antibodies that are attacking her heart.
Your pressure number's a little bit up again. Did they tell you?
Yeah. And I think, oh my goodness, we gotta through how many kids, how many times. You get that feeling of impending doom, like it's never gonna end. It's just on repeat.
Yeah. Transplanted hearts, for reasons we don't fully understand, don't last forever. And so if you're an older person who's getting a transplant, you may be able to live out the natural duration of your life before your transplanted heart gives out. But we didn't transplant Sierra at the age of 7 years old to get her to 10th grade. We want to give Sierra a nice, long, normal life.
And so, Sierra goes back on the transplant waiting list. But the doctors warn the wait could be much longer this time, as long as 2 years. And because of her condition, an artificial heart pump is not an option. As difficult as the news is to hear, in typical Bingham form, Stacy finds a bright side.
We are grateful for the breaks we get. I think home breaks. Yeah. I guess it's go home and get that breath of fresh air before the next thing hits.
A month later, the Binghams are back at the hospital to learn more about what's next for Sierra. They bring Gage along for a pacemaker adjustment.
Ready for Mr. Turtle?
At the age of 6, he's had a pacemaker for 3 years now.
Yeah.
Sierra was about Gage's age when she had her first heart transplant. Now that she's 15, she has a say in her own health care, even can't say no if she decides she doesn't want a second transplant. She has asked her parents not to keep any secrets from her about what's ahead, no matter how scary. And scary it certainly is.
I need to go in the middle of the night and keep checking to make sure she has a pulse because she's going to die in the middle of the night. I get scared to death that she won't be there in the morning.
In fact, Sierra's condition deteriorates quickly, and soon she and Stacy are back in Palo Alto to wait close to the hospital for a donor heart. Trying to keep life as normal as possible Under this family's extraordinary circumstances, Sierra attends prom at the hospital with another patient. And then, out of the blue, the Binghams receive an email from the grandmother of Sierra's first donor, a woman who saw our first report on the Binghams back in 2013 and had a feeling that it was her grandson's heart that saved Sierra. And when she looked up the Binghams' blog, she knew she was right. His name was Nicholas. Now she has learned that Nicholas's heart, beating in Sierra's chest, is failing. And she and her family, including Nicholas's brother and sister, want to meet Sierra. They meet in a park not far from the hospital.
This is Sierra.
Hi, Sierra.
How are you?
Sierra brings a stethoscope so they can listen to Nicholas's heart one last time. Stacy tells the family that Sierra's first reaction when she learned she'd need a new heart was guilt that she couldn't keep Nicholas's heart alive longer.
It's just something that happens and we don't know what. But I do want you to know that she did value that heart, and the 9 years she's had it.
Yes.
So tell us about Nicholas.
The Binghams had assumed Nicholas died in an accident, but now they learned the horrifying truth. Nicholas was murdered by his drug-addicted stepfather. His organs went to Sierra and 2 other children.
It's been easier on us knowing that he was able to help 3 people, not just Sierra, and so that's helped us a lot.
They take pictures together, this unlikely blended family. And then, just 3 weeks later, just like that, the wait is over. A donor heart is available much sooner than anyone expected. Before she goes in for her second transplant, a reminder that in spite of her medical condition, Sierra is a regular teenager, a surprise visit from an admirer.
Well, we've seen this hall before, haven't we, Dad?
Minutes later, more goodbyes outside the OR doors they've been to before and will be again.
Love you too, guys.
For Jason and Stacy, another long night of waiting and worrying. She is 15 years old, and Sierra Bingham is about to undergo her second heart transplant.
Give me a hug. Where are you going to talk?
The heart that kept her alive for almost 9 years is failing more rapidly than anyone anticipated. The doctors are running out of options.
I was getting nervous. I was really getting nervous because it's heart-wrenching to see your kid plummet, and then, like, how close to death's door are we going to be knocking before something comes available?
Now the surgeons remove that failing heart, and soon the donor arrives. Doctors inspect the donor heart to make sure there are no surprises. It looks perfect. Implantation begins.
Hi.
It's the middle of the night.
Oh, sleep.
Jason and Stacy have been waiting for news.
It's a long night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
So, yes, so have a seat. So, everything went well, very smoothly.
A healthy heart is beating in Sierra's chest. She's been given a fresh start for a second time in her young life. Her recovery goes unbelievably smoothly.
Leaving the CDICU. We're out of here. We're heading home, baby.
Sierra is released from the hospital in record time after just 8 days. She's already thinking about what she'll do with this next chapter.
Just doing the little simple things in life, like going to the beach, hanging out with friends, going to church and stuff.
She and Stacy plan to spend a brief stint at the nearby Ronald McDonald House and then surprise the rest of the family by returning home a week earlier than expected. But another shoe was about to drop. A doctor has asked to speak to Jason and Stacy.
Your heart just sinks a little bit like, why? Why it's not to invite us to a barbecue?
In checking Gage's pacemaker, doctors have discovered Gage has had 2 episodes in the night where his heart flutters rather than beats. Either one of them could have been fatal. His heart failure is worsening, and so, in addition to the pacemaker he already has, he'll need to have a defibrillator implanted to shock his heart back into rhythm if it flutters again. But Jason is worried. Gage is headed for the transplant list.
We've seen what happens, and maybe we know too much.
Yeah.
I'm ready to go home a little bit and not stay here for a year or two. So, as good as he's doing, I just got to prepare myself that things could change. So.
Jason and Stacy have had no time to recover from Sierra's transplant, no time to recharge before this next crisis. They are emotionally exhausted.
Give him a good luck kiss. This is a good part.
Be brave, okay, bud.
Surgeons have warned Jason and Stacy that there's a chance Gage could come out of surgery on an artificial heart pump similar to the one Lindsay was on. It would mean he could not leave the hospital until a donor heart could be found.
To think that he walked in here, a happy little kid with this little bear, and I think that he might come out, or we could get the call any second now, that they're having to put him on a heart device. It's pretty hard.
But Gage's surgery goes well. No artificial heart pump necessary. And finally, they get to go home. The hardware inside Gage's tiny chest regulates the beat of his heart, but it can't stop the progression of his heart disease, which is happening much faster than anyone anticipated. He'd always shaken his head no when his parents gently told him he would one day need a transplant. But then one night, tired and having just thrown up, Gage knew it was time.
He goes, "You're right, Mom." I'm like, "I'm right, what about?" And he says, "I do need a heart. It's time." I think in his way he was accepting the reality of it. It was heart-wrenching.
Just 3 months after his last surgery, Gage is back at the hospital to have an artificial heart pump implanted in his tiny chest.
I could just have your autograph?
He is asked if it's okay for doctors to remove a small piece of his heart so they can study what's causing his and his siblings' heart disease. And then it's yet another goodbye outside the OR, a place the Binghams know all too well.
Be brave, okay? You're a brave boy.
Gage's teddy bear Woody goes in with him. Surgery goes smoothly, and soon Gage is back on his feet. The equipment that's keeping him alive is far more portable than Lindsay's was. He can carry it on his back. And once again, all the Binghams are back in Palo Alto, where they'll wait together for Gage to get his new heart. In the meantime, he has a lot of questions.
Why does it feel like to have a brand new heart?
You'll feel so much better. You've seen how Sierra and Sierra and Lindsay are? See how they are right now? That's how you'll feel.
Gage's will be the 4th transplant for this young family, their 8th open heart surgery. We have wondered so many times in the years we followed them, how do they keep going?
You have a
Aren't they resentful? Don't they feel sorry for themselves? Many would ask, why us? But the Binghams? Not for a moment.
I've never felt why us. I feel like we've been privileged to have 5 amazing kids. And if we succeeded, that they are healthy and live a long life and have a memory of a good childhood, then I say we're successful at being parents.
The Berlin heart, an artificial heart pump, child-sized.
This is my Berlin pump, and it goes up into here, and it connects to my heart. And this pump is the air, and this machine helps me, and if it got turned off, it hooked me up to a little thingamajiggy, whatever it's called, a little hand pump.
A fancy bicycle pump. What else are we going to do now?
Wait until the heart comes, right?
Yep.
The Berlin heart is a remarkable little device surgically implanted in Lindsay to circulate her blood using an air compressor like this one. It is the only artificial heart designed specifically for children. It connects through her abdomen to her heart. This massive cart rolls alongside Lindsay wherever she goes.
An important point is that children are not just small adults. They are very different than adults, and in particular, development of medicines or devices for children is very difficult.
There's the Berlin.
Being on the Berlin heart allows very sick kids to regain strength prior to a heart transplant.
When patients are in heart failure with a poorly working heart for a long time, they lose weight, they don't move around anymore, they are practically bedridden, and they're in a generally poor health. And the Berlin heart allows us to rehabilitate these patients.
Ready?
Lindsay had her Berlin heart for nearly 8 months while she waited for a donor heart. 8 months to exercise,
Good.
dance, grow,
1, 2.
and so
Love you, Lindsay Lou.
the day finally came to wheel Lindsay to the operating room for her heart transplant. The Berlin heart attached to her bed.
We've done many patients with the Berlin heart now, so we know that device very well. It's become our friend now.
And it is their friend today. Doctors remove it to make way for Lindsay's new heart. And then use a defibrillator to spark the new heart back to life.
Pediatric hearts are fantastic. The smaller, the more impressive in terms of how fast they start beating and how quickly they go back to full normal function.
Everything looks good.
2 weeks after getting her new heart, Lindsay is ready to leave the hospital.
All right, Lindsay, are you ready to go?
Oh, yeah.
She's out of here.
Hello, five.
I was just asking if they're just gonna sew it out, like.
You know what? Because they're taking out your whole heart, they'll just pick it up and take all that equipment that's in there and on it. Everything will just come out when the heart comes out. they won't take it out and then the heart out, because the whole heart's just coming out. So they'll just cut it at the arteries and the veins that come in here, and they'll take it out, and they'll have you on a machine that will pump your blood for you, and then they'll take you to your new, precious, brand new heart that's all healthy, that came from some wonderful little kid that wanted to give it to you, and then they'll put it in your chest, and then your heart, you'll feel a lot better.
Gage. Okay, let's just see when you're done. Gage.
Nope, that will be gone too, because all this right here and this right here, these things are to help your heart that you have that's sick, help it to beat better, to work so that you can stay feeling okay until you get a new heart. So once this heart comes out, you don't need it anymore, because you're going to get a healthy heart that's not sick. So all this stuff will come out with your new heart.
Why does it feel like to have a brand new heart?
You'll feel so much better. All these stomach pains that you're having, and then not feeling like eating.
You will eat a whole lot. You'll be so
all
hungry.
That sickness will go away.
Will I feel the heart still?
It'll be just like the heart in your chest. It won't be any different. You'll feel a heart beating in your chest.
You won't have that humming sound anymore.
Yeah, you won't have the humming sound. Will be gone. You'll have a boom, 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 boom,